Do you want to wait 148,104,806,400 years for this redstone lamp to turn on? Well, you do? Well, that's great, because today I'm going to show you how to chain Etho hopper clocks, or well, in a sense, dropper clocks, since it's chained in Minecraft Bedrock Edition, and also how to make it useful and not ridiculously long. So before we go any further, if you have never heard of the Etho hopper clock, then you are missing out, because the Etho hopper clock is a long timing clock that has existed for a long time, and that works both on Java and Bedrock Edition, and well, it basically allows you to configure timings and they will last long, so it's a very slow clock, and I can just demonstrate that. Let's put 8 items in. The duration of the clock cycle all depends on how many items you have in hoppers. And well, as you can see, this clock does function like this. And of course you can adjust it by placing more items in it. And well, its maximum capacity is 5 stacks because, well, of course a hopper has 5 stacks of space. And that means that a maximum duration cycle of one Etho hopper clock is 128 seconds, because hoppers transfer 2.5 items per second, or rather 1 item every 8 game ticks, and the game runs at a rate of 20 game ticks, of course. You're probably wondering, how did we get to 148,104,806,400 years? Well, actually, it is quite simple. So, what you need to know is that, of course, what I've set up right here is that the first hopper clock is, well, a hopper clock, of course, and it has 5 stacks in it, so it will last 128 seconds. And whenever this clock finishes its cycle, this observer will detect it and will send a pulse to this clock right here. And this clock, of course, also has maximum capacity, because we switched over to droppers instead of hoppers in this one. We can have 9 stacks, so that's a total of 576 items. And that means every 128 seconds, one of those items will go over into the next dropper. And well, you know, that is quite a lot of items. That is 576 items, so that means we will have to go through 576 cycles of this one for this one to trigger. And that means, of course, we always just multiply by the amount we have in the next one. So we have 128 times 576 times 576 times 576 times 576 and times 576, and you can chain this infinitely technically, but you know, at one point it's pointless because you're never going to reach it in the lifetime of the universe anyway. So yeah, but it is pretty cool to look at. But it is not just cool to look at, because you can of course configure it to useful timings. So of course you don't have to put the full capacity in each of those droppers or hoppers. You can fine tune the amount of items that are in these droppers, or well, for the first clock hoppers, so that you have a precise timing. So for example, let's say you want a 5-minute timer. So that's actually pretty simple. So first we're going to do a 1-minute timer on our first Etho hopper clock. And what you need to keep in mind is that hoppers transfer 2.5 items per second. So that's fairly simple. We're just going to take our 60 seconds multiplied by 2.5, and that will be 150 items. So 150 items should be 2 stacks and 22 items. So we're just going to configure that. Let's take the amount of items that we need. Should be that. And we can put that right in there. And now we just put our pistons here and our redstone block, and our clock will be running. It's not. Okay, we need the redstone dust, of course, and our clock is running, as you can see. And well, now that's a 1-minute timer. And now you want 5 minutes? Actually, that's quite simple. So we are just going to place an observer right here. And we are going to build the next module of our Etho hopper clock, or in that case dropper clock, since after the first it's only dropper clocks. And we're going to put that in there. And let's put 5 items in here. Perfect, that's exactly what you want. Now, after 5 minutes, you are going to get, or rather every 5 minutes, you are going to get an output from this redstone lamp right here. And of course, if you just go with maximum capacity for all these hopper and dropper clocks, that's kind of a mess because of course the maximum capacity is 576 items. But if you have the first one as a 1 minute timer, and then the next one you can have it, let's say, as a 60-minute timer, so you could have 60 items in this one, so then it would be 1 hour right here. And then you can make precise timings that actually match our human systems. Of course, in the range of a few minutes and a few hours, that's the only range where this will be useful, because I don't think you want to be sitting at a redstone contraption for days. But yeah, it's pretty cool to know that you can chain these. So you know how to set it up now, and that's cool and all, but I'm going to explain to you how the famous Etho hopper clock functions. So first of all, the Etho hopper clock is something made by Etho. Well, you know Etho, he is quite a famous guy, and he has been on YouTube for a long time, has a super long Minecraft Let's Play, but this is the basic Etho hopper clock. And well, it is pretty useful, and it has been used all over the place. In Java Edition you have to use sticky pistons, but in Bedrock Edition you can actually use normal pistons. But we are not using normal pistons here, and that is something that I will go into later. But this is the basic hopper clock. Now on Bedrock Edition you can actually modify this slightly, and this is something pretty cool that cannot be done on Java Edition, and that is that, well, you can place comparators on top of pistons, and when the pistons extend they will not break. And that is something we utilize right here to chain them easily, and to not make some sort of staircase that would be necessary when we were on Java Edition. So let's just put some items in here, and as you can see, it does work the exact same, and that is pretty great. Now you're wondering, why is this useful and why is this needed in chaining those hopper clocks? And the simple answer is that, well, we need to read with the observer from the bottom right here, because when we read from the top, this will not be something viable, because we will have these droppers right here, and when one of those droppers gets powered, like this, and we have an observer right here, of course there will always be one of those two droppers which is not powered by the redstone block, and that means it will send long pulses all the way through, and that of course is something that we do not want. We only want a pulse to be sent to the next clock when the cycle of the current clock is finished. So that's why on one clock we are using the normal standard layout that has been used forever and that works in Java Edition. And then we have the inverted Etho hopper clock layout, and then we have the normal one, inverted, normal, inverted, and of course we always switch the observer from above to below, and above and below, and so on. And of course I say Etho hopper clock all the time, but it can also be used as a dropper clock. So this basically works the same way. You have the items in there, but the change is that of course you have droppers instead of hoppers, and hoppers automatically push items into the container they're facing in. And for droppers, it's almost the same. They will put items in a container they're facing, but only if they're powered. And well, that means that we will only trigger this clock once when we do power it. So as you can see right here, we can power it and it will put items in there every time we pulse with this observer. And the reason why this actually works is because this dropper of course is powered by the redstone block, so it cannot get powered again by the pulse. And it won't put again items in that one, while this one is also putting items in there. Now the last thing I want to address is why we are using sticky pistons right here. Now I just want to demonstrate a little issue with observers when we are using normal pistons. So when we are going to use normal pistons, so let's just get some hoppers and make our hopper clock just like this. Sometimes the observers will double pulse, so let's just see if we can reproduce this. Okay, maybe that is a little too many items in here. See the double pulse. Okay, maybe that's a little too fast to see, so I'm just going to add back some items. You saw that the observer fired twice, and that is something we do not want, of course, because that could be very fatal. So if we were very unlucky, so right here, when this one eventually triggers, that is like not ever in your lifetime or in Earth's lifetime, when this one would retract and it were a normal piston, this one would fire twice and it would put 2 items in there instead of 1. And that of course is not good at all, because if 2 items are pulsed over instead of 1, this is going to go a lot faster, even though it's still extremely slow, but on shorter timings it is going to matter a lot. So for example, let's say we have this 1 minute timer right here, and it's double pulses when the 1 minute timer is done, then there will be 2 minutes added to this one instead of 1 minute, and that could turn out to be quite fatal in the long run, because your timings will be messed up. And as far as I know, this issue does not occur when we are using sticky pistons. So let's just put some stickies right here, and you should see that we have absolutely no double pulsing. And of course, well, that does indeed not happen very frequently with normal pistons. Well, actually it does happen quite frequently, but not every time. And as far as I've tested, it does not occur at all with sticky pistons. So the final verdict, are these actually useful? I would say they're actually pretty useful. So right here we have this lamp, it will pulse every 24 hours. Now of course I don't see why you would want a lamp to pulse every 24 hours, but you know, on the smaller scale it is actually quite useful. So we have 60 items in here of course, and it will get pulsed every 1 minute. So every hour this observer right here will give an output, and this one has 24, so every 24 hours. But of course, in my opinion, it could be useful in stuff like, let's say for example, timers for farms. So if you are on a multiplayer server, you can time how long you have been AFK and then like automatically push you through a portal or something, so you unload the area. And that is something quite useful, something done with redstone only, and it is fully doable in Minecraft survival. So of course this isn't possible without the magnificent creation of Etho, so I will link his channel in the description, because even for a contraption that is used as commonly as this one, I feel like its credit is well deserved, and well, especially because of that. So thank you very much for watching, subscribe if you found this useful, because I have much more interesting stuff like this on my channel, and well, that's about it, and with that being said, bye!